Dear representatives of the press, I am pleased to welcome my dear colleague, Mr. Lavrov, to Ankara. Welcome to Mr. Lavrov and his accompanying delegation. Dear friends, global and regional dynamics are changing rapidly. Every day, we are faced with issues that need to be addressed. There are new areas of opportunity that we should be interested in. At a time like this, when we are faced with developments that are somehow mediocre, directly interested in our country, we believe that it is necessary, and there is great benefit, to increase coordination and consultations between Russia and Turkey.
Есть большая польза для увеличения координации и консультаций между Россией и Турцией.
As Mr. President pointed out, the pilots might, Mr. Putin. Within the framework of these tasks, bilateral relations, as well as international issues, we plan to deepen our cooperation. With this concept, Mr. Lavrov and I had productive meetings. We discussed in detail all the issues that were on our bilateral agenda. We also exchanged views on how our cooperation can be promoted. From energy to tourism, from trade to energy, we can and should strengthen our relations. Our multifaceted cooperation is also with contributions to our respective bodies. We can and are making every effort to advance our relationship. Dear members of the press, today marks the third year since the beginning of the war between Ukraine and Russia. We wish our two neighbors to live in peace, tranquility, and prosperity. The number of deaths, as well as the destruction that resulted from this war, is necessary. We want this war to stop immediately, so to speak. This war has a negative impact on geography, especially first of all on the global one. South. This is a multifaceted crisis. It is necessary. And we want it to be resolved on a permanent basis. In this regard, from the very first day, Turkey supported precisely those ways that were aimed at a diplomatic resolution of the issue. First of all, after a very short time, we did everything possible, and in Istanbul, the parties sat down at the negotiating table. The Black Sea Initiative, the Grain Initiative, has also been successfully implemented. After that, we continued all our initiatives in order for the parties to reach a diplomatic resolution of the issue. Today is the fourth, when the fourth year of this war is already beginning. The United States has also taken the initiative to end this war through negotiations. This position is exactly the same position that coincides with our position, which we pursued at the beginning of this war. We attach great importance to the new initiative of the United States, which is focused on ending this conflict. We believe that it is only through the participation of the two sides in these negotiations that it is possible to achieve a resolution of issues. As part of this question 4, we are ready to support any support in order for these negotiations to continue. As before, we are ready to provide our platform for negotiations. On the other hand, safe Black Sea navigation, and shipping will continue to make the same efforts for this. We believe that this will be a very important step, a step to establish an atmosphere of trust. Our final task in this regard is to achieve a permanent resolution of the issue between the two sides. Dear friends, we are sure that in this regard, it is necessary to establish this state of well-being. Over the past 3 months, developments in Syria have been very important in this regard. The people of Syria put an end to the brutality, and now the people strongly want to live in peace, stability, and prosperity. Turkey will be next to Syria in this regard. Today, I grabbed Lavrov. We are also discussing the issue. We attach importance to the territorial integrity and unity of Syria. We also saw that both the Russian side and we share the opinion that it is necessary to prevent all kinds of separatist movements. On the other hand, there can be no question that terrorist organizations could exist in Syria. The international community is in the fight against Daesh PKK, and it is necessary for them to show a common approach. Not everyone should respect. We believe that everyone should respect our security-related problems in this regard. Dear members, representatives of the press, today we also discussed the situation in Gaza. In order for the implementation to be carried out as a result of the transfer, it is also necessary to increase efforts in this regard. On the other hand, it is necessary that Netanyahu also stop all these wars, and it is necessary. It is impossible to allow the beginning of a new genocide. On the other hand, the beginning of new hostilities in the West Bank must be stopped. The Palestinians must not allow the forced emigration of Palestine to their native lands. In this regard, it is necessary that all countries, regional countries, show a common approach. In this regard, Russia also holds a common opinion with Russia. Both in Palestine and in Lebanon, in Syria, it is necessary that the Israeli attacks end this Israeli attack. In this regard, I would also like to note that, dear ones, the only way in this regard is to complete peace, and to end this conflict with peace and tranquility. Dear members, representatives of the press, Turkey and Russia intend to deepen their strategic cooperation in this regard. Dear friends, I once again want to say good morning to Mr. Lavrov and his accompanying delegation. Thank you very much. Dear representatives of the press, first of all, I would like to express sincere gratitude on behalf of our delegation to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Turkey, Hakan Fidan, for the fact that today we were able to meet and discuss a wide range of issues on both the bilateral and international agenda by an operational agreement. And of course, I thank my colleague and friend for the traditionally warm welcome and the high level of organization of the working visit of the Russian delegation. We stated with satisfaction that despite the tense international situation, the Russian-Turkish the dialogue maintains intensity and progressive dynamics at all levels. Our presidents Putin and Erdogan regularly contact. In addition to telephone contacts last year, our leaders held two face-to-face meetings on the sidelines of the SCO summit in Astana in July this year, and within the framework of the BRICS summit in Kazan in October 2024. The rhythm set by the heads of state, the rhythm of effective communication, is supported by representatives of our department, all other ministries of defense, intelligence services. Last year, Mr. Fidan and I regularly spent several hours on topical issues of our bilateral relations, on the international agenda, and our last contact took place just a few days ago in Johannesburg on the sidelines of the G20 Council of Foreign Ministers. We welcome the intensification of interparliamentary exchanges. Last September, the chairman of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, Mr. Kurtulmuş, paid an official visit to Moscow. He was received by President Putin, held talks with the leadership of the Federation Council, and spoke at the Diplomatic Academy of our ministry. And just the other day, this week, the chairman of the Federation Council of our Federal Assembly, Valentina Ivanovna Matvienko, will be in Ankara on an official visit. We also discussed ways to increase bilateral trade and economic ties, including our large-scale cooperation in the energy sector. Noted mutual interest and solid potential for cooperation in the financial and banking sector, the sector of industrial cooperation, transport and logistics, tourism. Of course, we could not but talk in detail about various aspects of joint work on such a strategic project as the construction of the Akuyu nuclear power plant. Russian-Turkish specialists, working side by side, are making efforts to ensure the physical startup of Unit Number 1 nuclear power plants. Otherwise, all 4 power units are being built simultaneously around the clock without involvement. There is a serious groundwork for new beginnings in the field of nuclear energy. We touched upon the issues of energy, touched upon the issues of operation and safety of the Turkish Stream and Blue Stream gas pipelines. This is necessary in conditions of continuous provocations by the Kiev regime, which strives to undermine the normal functioning of energy facilities, including pipelines, with terrorist acts. It is important for Turkey that they work smoothly. Turkey is a major importer and transit country of our natural gas. Therefore, any destabilization of energy flows for whatever reason is fraught not only with a weakening of the Turkish gas industry, but also with an increase in inflation in the energy market as a whole, which will ultimately hit the average consumer. We have informed our Turkish friends in detail about the Russian-American talks that took place on February 18th in Riyadh, and which received a very positive assessment from the point of view of the opportunity to finally have a normal dialogue, despite the numerous contradictions that, of course, remain, but without a normal dialogue. It will not be clear whether we will be able to smooth out contradictions or not. Не будет ясно, сможем ли мы эти противоречия сгладить или нет. We will continue contacts with our American partners, and there is a corresponding agreement on this. We reviewed in detail a number of international and regional subjects, including the processes that are currently going on around the situation in Ukraine. We do not change our position and note only with satisfaction that there is more realism, much more realism, in the position of many countries that understand that without a long-term stable agreement that would eliminate the root causes of this situation, nothing will be possible to agree. We reviewed in detail the situation in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict zone, exchanged views on the measures that are necessary to ensure an immediate sustainable ceasefire, the release of hostages, and, of course, the resumption of the negotiation process, on the basis of a Security Council resolution providing for the right of the Palestinian people to establish their independent state, which would coexist side by side with Israel in peace and security. We expressed satisfaction with the achieved level of cooperation between our countries on the Syrian issue, confirmed our mutual interest in giving momentum to joint work to resolve the situation in this country, taking into account the new realities. We considered the prospect of deepening cooperation in the South Caucasus. Special attention was paid to the task of strengthening trust between the parties, restoring infrastructure and transport communications, and intensifying economic activity, including on the basis of multilateral agreements, within the framework of the International Advisory Platform 3+3. This refers to the 3 sides of the South Caucasus and their 3 neighbors, Russia, Turkey, and Iran. In general, I think the contact was very useful. We will continue to work in Ankara, and I am sure that this meeting will make a useful contribution. to the further development of multifaceted cooperation between the Russian Federation and the Republic of Turkey. The first question and the channel from Qatar. Thank you so much for providing. 101st question to Mr. Hakan Fidan. Turkey, especially with regard to the Black Sea Grain Initiative, through this grain deal, has really shown a huge intermediary role between Russia and Ukraine. And in the future, Turkey is going to continue its mediation role in this regard. Or will it also be interested in new mediation roles in other regions of the world? Last week, Ukrainian President Zelensky was in Ankara, and he demanded international security guarantees to destroy all these issues. How can these guarantees be used to ensure these guarantees? How realistic are these security guarantees? It was Mr. Fidan's question. Mr. Lavrov, between America and the United States. You said that there were some of your contacts, and how these contacts can contribute, and there is based on Turkey's messenger role. Whether Turkey can once again become the host or provide a platform for these negotiations. On the other hand, Zelensky spoke about international security guarantees. Is it possible to say what you think about these security guarantees? Zelensky also said that both Turkey and European countries should be included. We should be included in this process. What do you think about this whole process, Mr. Lavrov? You know, I can only confirm our position, because it has not changed, unlike the position of the character you mentioned, who changes it much more often than green t-shirts, and the position of European countries is also difficult to understand, because they have it quite unstable and changes depending on the one who has any ideas.
Потому что и у них она достаточно неустойчивая и меняется в зависимости от того, у кого какие возникают идеи.
Against this background, the position of the United States stands out. It is stated consistently, it does not call for just immediately to make peace, leave the line of contact, and then think about what to do. We have always stressed that this option would not suit us. This option was already tried in April of the 22nd year in Istanbul, when we reached an agreement based on the principles that the Ukrainians themselves proposed to us and asked us as a gesture of goodwill to stop the offensive of our troops and even step back a little, which we did. And the only result was that the West, represented by the then British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, forbade Ukraine to sign the document it had already initiated. And they said that Ukraine should continue to weaken Russia further, will receive weapons, will mobilize and fight, for as long as Russia does not suffer a strategic defeat on the battlefield. Therefore, we no longer accept options using some advice from the other side. The President clearly said that we are ready to negotiate with Ukraine and with Europe, with any representatives who would like to help achieve peace in good faith, but we will stop military operations only when these negotiations give a firm, sustainable result that suits the Russian Federation. And, of course, the realities on earth must be taken into account. in conditions when the Nazi regime in Kiev since 2019 adopted a series of laws prohibiting the Russian language in all spheres of life, including education at all levels, including the media, including culture, when the same regime recently banned the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church by law. All this, of course, forced residents not only Crimea, who made a choice in the 2014 year, in the face of the Nazi coup in Kiev, but also residents of Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, Zaporozhye regions to make their choice.
Но и жителей Донецкой, Луганской, Херсонской, Запорожской областей сделать свой выбор.
Russians did not want to remain under the rule of a regime that exterminated everything Russian, on the lands that had been developed by Russians for centuries, where cities were created, factories, ports were built.
Осваивались русскими, где создавались города, строились заводы, фабрики, порты.
They made their choice. Now, in accordance with the Russian constitution, this choice has acquired an international legal status. And respect for all these realities, of course, is mandatory, just as Ukraine's categorical non-entry into NATO is mandatory. There must be a clear, concrete agreement on this. At a meeting in Riyadh with American colleagues, we welcomed the fact that President Trump publicly and repeatedly called the line on dragging Ukraine into NATO a mistake, saying that if he were president in the coming years, he would never allow such a line to prevail, and thus there would be no crisis, according to his words.
Возобладать, и тем самым не состоялось бы никакого кризиса, по его словам.
But there is no doubt that Ukraine's entry into NATO is one of the key root causes of what is happening.
Одной из ключевых первопричин происходящего. В этом никаких сомнений нет.
One of Donald Trump's advisors said that it is clear that the war was provoked, and it was not necessarily provoked by the Russian Federation. This war was being prepared for a long time by Washington under the Democrats, by Brussels, by the Brussels bureaucracy. And of course, the second root cause is, as I have already said, in fact the genocide of all Russians, and Russian-speaking residents of the southeast of Ukraine, who, as I recalled, made their choice a legitimate choice, in favor of returning to the Russian Federation. What are the security guarantees? Here, or rather not here, in Istanbul, in the very April of the year 2022, which I have already mentioned. Security guarantees were discussed on behalf of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, on behalf of Turkey, Germany, but under the conditions of refusal to join NATO. There was a detailed description of how it should look. So there were security guarantees on the table, and the Ukrainian delegation itself, in fact, formulated them in a non-bloc policy, without joining any military alliances, the West band, so now we need to see who will finally decide this. I don't think that the Ukrainian leadership is capable of anything now, the desire to earn money, including in bargaining with the United States on how to pay with the help that the Biden administration pumped up the Ukrainian space without any exculpatory documents.
Украинское пространство.
Dear friends, as you know, our president, Mr. Erdogan, with regard to the war in Ukraine, is sensitive to this issue in the sense that Turkey is doing everything possible and doing everything possible to start the war, is doing everything. There have been contacts between the American side and the Russian side in recent days. Go contact security guarantee issues have also been raised. We are also closely following the development of the event. Fundamentally, if you look at it, Turkey is ready to do everything possible to contribute to the achievement of peace in this region. But like my Mr. Lavrov, Mr. Colleague said, noted what kind of atmosphere will be created, what kind of composition will be. We will prepare technical materials, and then the presidents will give their decisions. We are closely following the progress of all these developments. Turkey, as always, is ready to play a facilitating, accelerating role in this regard, and we are playing the same role in this regard. There are moments that we share with you, there are moments that we do not share with the press or with the public. This destructive war must end, and then rebuild this area. The second question from the Tiwi Star, please.
Sergey Viktorovich, the first question is for you. Steve Losses, one of the participants in the Russian-American talks in Ariada, said that the draft Istanbul agreements could again form the basis for a settlement of the Ukrainian crisis. Can you confirm or deny this information? And what consultations did Trump talk about on February 25th between Russia and the United States? The second question, if I may, is to Mr. Fidan. Earlier, Turkey received an invitation to become a BRICS partner country. Is the discussion of this format, the format of this cooperation, going on now? And does Ankara express interest in acquiring this status? Thank you.
As for Steve Witkow's statement that the draft Istanbul agreements of April 2022 year can be taken as a basis in the Ukrainian settlement, I have not heard this, but I can confirm only one thing. That Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, has repeatedly made this statement, reminding that in Istanbul we were in 1 hour, maybe, before signing a full-fledged agreement based on the principles proposed by the Ukrainians, but Boris Johnson forbade it.
До подписания полноценного договора на основе предложенных украинцами принципов, но Борис Джонсон запретил это делать.
And the head of the Ukrainian delegation at those negotiations, who heads the Servant of the People faction in the Verkhovna Rada, publicly confirmed in an interview this fact that they were ready to sign 3 years ago, as it turns out now practically. But they were banned by the leaders of this regime, who are in London, in Brussels, and then were in Washington.
3 года назад, как получается уже теперь практически, но им запретили руководители этого режима, которые находятся в Лондоне, в Брюсселе и тогда находились в Вашингтоне.
The principles of the Istanbul agreements are, first of all, the refusal to join NATO, the refusal to deploy military bases, the refusal of military exercises with the participation of foreign troops, non-aligned status, and obtaining a security guarantee from the 5 permanent members of the UN-Security Council, Turkey, Germany. There could be others who wished such an opportunity was provided. They broke it all down and decided to wait and see which way the situation on the battlefield would tilt. Well, we waited. As for the meetings with the Americans after the talks in Riyadh, we agreed to restore channels of communication on all issues and bilateral ties in various fields. And on international affairs, including Ukraine, the Americans should determine their special representative for this purpose. In the Middle East, of course, but the simplest thing, maybe, the simplest thing.
Специального представителя для этой цели определить и по Ближнему Востоку, разумеется, но самое простое, может быть, самое несложное,
After all, we have proposed to establish this, to establish the normal work of the Russian embassies in Washington and the American one in Moscow. For this purpose, two such technical preliminary contacts have already taken place last week, and full-fledged consultations will already take place this week, which, I hope, will remove the artificial obstacles heaped up by democratic administrations in the United States in recent years.
Демократическими администрациями в Соединенных Штатах за последние годы.
Dear friends, regarding the issue of partnership in BRICS, as you know, Turkey is a sovereign state and attaches great importance to this in terms of the international economy. Nowadays, international economic cooperation. Countries that have not fully achieved this cooperation, they often face economic crises and cannot achieve their economic objectives. This is unrealistic. Therefore, Turkey, first of all with the European Union, attaches great importance to economic cooperation. I can say that, as you know, with European states, with the European Union, we have such an adventure regarding membership in the European Union. But I can also tell you that with regard to the use policy regarding identification, so to speak, it is very difficult to take membership of a large state with a Muslim population. But the situation is as follows. In this regard, we continue our relations with European states with trade relations. We continue to develop trade relations, both in terms of exports and imports, but on the other hand, we also offer, of course, international economic cooperation. The President has a very big vision in this regard. One of these collaborations is cooperation with BRICS. But we understand that the BRICS is at the stage of institutionalization, and they have frozen, as far as I understand, the admission of new members to the BRICS. And in this regard, a new expression of partnership has appeared, that is, not the admission to BRICS membership, but the so-called partnership. Therefore, we continue to closely monitor the development of events. But unlike the European Union, the BRICS composition is very inclusive of every color, every religion, every culture, every civilization found in the BRICS platform. Muslims, Christians, Hindus, or blacks all attach great importance to this wealth. This is a very encompassing economic approach, encompassing. The third question is from there. Good afternoon. My name is Kasib Mohammed, correspondent of RT Arabic. Sergey Viktorovich, how do you assess the future of relations with Damascus? And how do you feel about maintaining the US military presence in Syria after the change of power in the country? Regarding the US military presence in Syria and how to treat it, it is necessary to ask not me, but the Syrian leadership. The Syrian people, I would even say, in the period before the government changed, the military presence of the United States played a negative role. First of all, it was a presence without any official invitation from the legitimate authorities. Secondly, the essence of this presence was to sit on the most fertile lands from the point of view of food, from the point of view of hydrocarbons, to use the proceeds from the illegal sale of these riches to the Syrian people, in order to finance quasi-structures created in the northeast of Syria by the Americans very actively, primarily in order to fuel Kurdish separatism. So it's hard to evaluate this role positively. Now we need to see how the leadership treats this, and how it will fit into the preparation and holding of a major event, the All-Syrian National Assembly, which should begin an inclusive process of working out agreements on the future of this country, with the participation, of course, of all political, ethnic, and religious groups.
Выработки договоренности о будущем этой страны с участием, конечно же, всех политических, этнических и конфессиональных групп.
If we see movement along this path,
увидим движение по этому пути,
I think this will play a positive role for relations between Damascus and the Russian Federation with all other countries that, as Mr. Fidan stressed in his introductory condition, are interested in ensuring a sovereign, independent, territorially integral Syria that will live in peace and harmony with all its neighbors.
будет жить в мире, согласии со всеми своими соседями.
The last question from the Anatolian Agency, please. My question is to Mr. Hakan Fidan, Israeli Minister of Israel Netanyahu. He noted that in the east of Syria, in the east of the Syrian capital, we will not allow Syrian troops to be deployed.
На востоке столицы Сирии мы не разрешим, чтобы были дислоцированы сирийские войска.
There is a buffer zone on the Dutch heights, and we will do everything possible to prevent all the threat emanating from this region to the Dutch heights, and for a certain time, we will remain on the Dutch heights, said. Noted what you can say about these recent statements, Mr. Hakan. Dear members of the press, I can tell you that Turkey's position, Turkey's policy is very clear. Our Mr. President, at every opportunity, notes our views, the views of our country, the policy of our country in this region. First of all, Palestine needs to create its own state, on which its people will live. On the other hand, the whole region should live in peace and tranquility there, so that no one encroaches on the territory of another country. To be honest, since the beginning of the crisis in the Gaza Strip, we have noted that this could provide us with a new opportunity for the formation, the creation of two states, which is exactly what we are talking about. If we can achieve this kind of formation of two states, in this way, the Palestinian state is implementing this project, and the Palestinians are what they deserve this state, and Israel, which for many years has been in search of security and stability, calm down, it will also achieve its objectives. But the development of events has shown us that Netanyahu and his government and his line, or the line that his supporters pursue, against the background of these events, they are using this line to expand their influence in Lebanon, in the West Bank of the Jordan River. They provoke all this. And how can more and more territories in the Gaza Strip be annexed in order to force the emigration of Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip? This is a current event, a development of events. But for a long time, we have been noting that for the security of Israel and its neighbors Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, need to look to create a favorable ground there to weaken this region. And so that the state of this region does not reach a certain military potential. The Americans have also worked and are working in this direction. But what do they say? We do not feel safe, and therefore we will work in this direction. This direction is that we will continue to annex or occupy new territory and continue to put pressure on the Muslim population. That's what this policy is all about. If there is enough of my strength, If there is not enough, I will invite the Americans, and thus I will be turning out to be this lever of pressure on this region. The policy is this. This is politics, a very risky policy, I can tell you. This can lead to serious body movements, because it can lead to escalation somewhere. But my basis is the escalation of the region. Therefore, what do we recommend? What do we recommend? As long as there is an opportunity to avoid this policy, which can lead to suicide, and put pressure on the government and Israel, and put pressure on Netanyahu, that you may think that we are already in control of everything. But suddenly you may face some kind of chaos, some kind of crisis, and you can put pressure again. The situation. I hope that before it's too late, they will turn off this road. Thank you very much.